Let's take this nice smooth homemade stone and make a rainbow sherbet inspired mandala. The first step is going to be to custom mix some paint. So I'm going to start with this lime green and a neon green. And I'm also going to add a little bit of Liquitex gesso so that we have nice solid coverage. And I'm going to mix this up to make the green for the lime in our sherbet. I am totally eyeballing these colors, so we'll see how this all turns out. But you can mix and match some colors to kind of come up with custom colors whenever you want to experiment a little bit. Next up is mixing this apricot paint with some neon orange paint and again some Liquitex gesso just for solid coverage. Sometimes this neon paint, when it's the main base, is a little bit see-through, so that's one of the reasons I'm adding the Liquitex gesso, is to just make sure we have nice solid coverage for this design. And last up, I'm going to mix this bright pink paint with some neon paint and Liquitex gesso. I'm also going to give that homemade stone a nice coat of Liquitex gesso just as a nice base coat. And then for the first part of this design, I'm going to make blended stripes of the 3 colors that you normally see in rainbow sherbet. So I'm starting out with just 1 stripe of each color, just alternating all the way until the stone is covered. They don't have to have perfect coverage at this point. This is more for spacing out the lines, and I'm using the size of the brush to kind of help create each of the stripes. Then I'm going to come back through and add a second layer of paint to each stripe. And you'll notice that I'm not too careful with the lines because I don't want them to be very stark lines. I want this to eventually look blended. So while 2 colors are wet, I run the brush between them to kind of blend the 2 colors. After I get the second coat on each stripe, I'm actually going to start dipping my brush in clean water and then going over each of the areas where colors meet. And you can see how it's kind of blending and making an ombre look between the stripes. So this is just trial and error. You can add more paint, you can use water. And before we start the mandala design, I'm going to give a nice coat of this Folk Art Extreme Hologram glitter paint all over the entire stone, because this is going to give a nice sparkly shiny background underneath the mandala design. I'm going to use my nifty double-sided dotting tool set, and I'm going to show the number of each dotting size up in the corner. So this center dot is using the number 16. It's the largest dotting tool. Now I'm taking the number 2 dotting tool and making the 4 directions. So think north, south, east, and west to evenly space these dots. And then I'm going to come back through and make 2 more additional dots in between these initial 4 dots. Now I'm going to take the number 4 dotting tool and place dots in between 2 of the dots from the previous row. So this helps line up the pattern and it blooms outward when you align the dots this way. Now we're just going to keep sizing up the dotting tools. If you've noticed, we're doing all even numbers. So we started with 2, then 4, now 6, and we're just going to continue the pattern outward with the dotting sizes getting larger. I did make a slight oops and I stopped recording for some reason when I got to the size number 10 dots. So we skipped right ahead. Number 10 is already there, and now we're going to move on to the number 12 size dotting tool. You'll notice that I'm starting out with all white paint for these dots, when sometimes mandalas have multiple colors as they're getting this initial pattern down. We are going to come back and add the green, orange, and pink colors to these dots as well, but I wanted them to have a nice framing background color so they stood out from our blended background. Okay, number 16 is the last round of dots that's going to go around the edges. You want to be careful not to put too much paint on the dotting tool, especially if the rock has any sort of slope because it can start dripping down. And now we're going to come back around and add the colored dots, except we're going to use the odd number dotting tools. So I'm starting out with green and the number 1 dotting tool, and I'm placing a dot more near the center of the mandala design. So this creates kind of a blooming flower effect. Now I'm using the number 3 dotting tool and the orange dots, and you can see how they're placed closer to the center. So the white shows as kind of almost like a halo around the colors. Moving on to the number 5 dotting tool and pink paint. And I'm alternating the colors the same way, same order that we did in the blended background. I love how you can really see the design starting to take shape here with the colors. One of the things I realized at this point is that my color combination, being inspired by Rainbow Sherbet, I think I made my colors a little more on the neon side than the actual ice cream or dessert is, but that's okay. So I think if I did this again, I would just lighten them up a little bit and make them maybe more towards a pastel side and a little less neon. So it still looks cool. I still like it, but a little bit different than what I was aiming for. Let's be honest, I probably just wanted an excuse to think about a nice, cool summer dessert. Now I'm going to attempt to make some swooshes using a dotting tool and a punch tool that I got off Amazon. I think you could use a toothpick also, just something with a pointed tip to kind of draw down from the dot and make kind of that pointed swoosh shape. So I'm not great at this. It's not something I do all the time, so these definitely did not come out as even as I would like, but it was a great experience. I think it still added a really nice pop to the border of the design on the outside of the stone. You know me, and it's been a minute since I made a sparkly rock, so I'm going to come back to that Folk Art Extreme Hologram glitter paint and add a dot to each of the colored dots. Same pattern, it's more towards the center and blooming outward, just to add extra sparkle and a little bit of texture to this stone. And after putting a little resin on it, we've got a beautiful, sparkling, bright rock that is going to catch someone's attention when it's hidden out in the community. It might be a little brighter than Rainbow Sherbet in the freezer, but it's definitely reminiscent of a nice bright popsicle. Thank you so much for stopping by to watch. I hope you got a little inspiration from this video. Take care, and I'll see you next time.